Hello everybody and welcome to Review Reviews, back with another Hong Kong content review, diving into some DIY low budget, Guilds of Guns, late 80s going into the 90s, scrappy films for the most part, very much a kind of the V-Cinema equivalent versus the Hong Kong that I've been diving into recently. I am talking about the recently released Vinegar syndrome of Iron Angel, which I'll be talking about the first film today and diving into the other two in separate videos. I'm talking about the first film, which was released in 1987, directed by Teresa Wong Sung, which is also the producer, writer, who has a production company involved in this film. Really interesting kind of background behind the scenes and details behind this film, and some speculation that she didn't actually direct this film, that it was actually directed by other people, but she got the main credit because she basically financed the film, she wrote the film, and basically she wanted to kind of push these films forward, essentially. Something that the extras will dive into more as I kind of dive into the set. However, with this type of unique kind of idea, in terms of Iron Angel, is basically a Chinese kind of angels kind of rip-off in a sense, very riff on the kind of Yes Madam, the hype and the boom of the kind of the Guilds of Guns kind of series, which I've covered quite a few already in terms of in Line of Duty movies, even with She Shoots Straight and some variations here and there that I've dived into. Some have been really excellent and some have been kind of mid-range kind of movies, but still fun nonetheless, and some that are just not very good at all. And these Iron Angel movies have really exploded on social media recently, on terms of the Hong Kong community, on Twitter and various other kind of forums, and just everyone's really kind of mind blown by this kind of release by Vinegar Syndrome in terms of all three films getting HD restorations, loads of special features, and just seeing these films in a brand new way with so many options into Cantonese kind of, you know, tracks and just full HD glory, just really kind of showcasing these films, and previously been really hard access and just really low tier quality. I have done an unboxing for the video if you want to check that out. I'll put a link in the below for it. But also there's been some German books releases as well in terms of these kind of mega books, kind of mega packs, which only done the first one, but they are releasing 2 and 3. So these aren't just exclusive to Vinegar Syndrome, and I wouldn't be surprised if 88 Films did their kind of trilogy box set maybe down the line in terms of the UK distribution. But for the time being, we do have the Vinegar Syndrome 1 to 3, region 3. It is available still. It is limited to 5,000 copies. So see for yourself if you want to own these films and if you think this is worth the pickup, or if you want to join in on the craze and the hype that these films are going for. I would describe it as basically this kind of analogy. If The Killer and Hard Boil are your 10 out of 10s, you know, top tier kind of action Hong Kong movies, you know, definitive films, the best of the best, put that aside. You get your mid-tier, which is the Thai Cage movies, and spin-off from The Last Blood, which is called Hard Boiled 2, which is pretty fucking awesome. Really great kind of mid-tier kind of films, really creative, great directors, great stars, really kick-ass in terms of action, stunts, all sorts of, you know, crazy stuff going on. Really delivers in terms of that kind of Hong Kong glorious nature. It's actually a mid-tier level, and I would say this is more your third-tier level when it comes to Hong Kong action, very much in the way of the V-Cinema, as we talked about, in terms of those kind of low budget, going into the 80s, early 90s with kind of more of a restricted budget, and, you know, stars that you recognize from various other projects, but maybe some that never really got time to shine, or maybe were kind of secondary kind of billing or third billing in some of the bigger films they've been involved with. And I think this is the case for all the actors involved in the Iron Angel movies. Granted, I haven't seen the third one yet, but they all seem to be ones that I recognize from other projects, whether it's Shaw Brothers, some of the Jackie Chan films, some of the Category 3 stuff, or even some of the V-Cinema films, funny enough. And this series has the most famous actress in the film in terms of Moon Lee. Now, it's interesting going into this because I've heard these are essentially Moon Lee kind of led films, and she's in the films in terms of all 3 entries, but she's not necessarily the main star. She is a supporting character. She is a second, third, or maybe fourth billing, depending on which film you watch, I suppose. And I'm very curious to see maybe more in terms of the special features later on, if that she was advertised as the main star of these films. I don't think she was. People have gone into this thinking, oh, I love Moon Lee. I love the fact that she does some really kick-ass Guilds of Guns kind of movies, and she's had quite a kind of an interesting kind of career. I've already kind of been surprised by her performances, and her roles were in the Mr. Vampire movies in the first two, and she's appeared in a few others here and there in terms of The Protector and various things, but very small roles, some supporting characters, but she's always been a delight to watch in those films. And to have her in an action capacity in terms of guns, full-on fight sequences where she's the showcase, and she definitely gets some good, really strong kind of action fight scenes in terms of her kind of, hand-to-hand combat, and she definitely kind of owns the screen when she's allowed to kind of be on screen for the film, essentially. I'm very curious if the marketing were pushing Moonlight to be the main star of these films, very much in the way of, like, if I'm watching a Jackie Chan film and then Sammo Hung turns up and is the main star. I think that was maybe the case with some of the Lucky Star movies, where they kind of advertised Jackie Chan all over the poster. Granted, he is in some of those films, but he's not the main star, and his role was very limited to what the film's trying to go for. He's just a supporting actor, where Sammo Hung is the main kind of star in this film. So I'm curious to see what the marketing was like for these films and whether they'll dive into it in terms of the special features. And one of the main characters for Iron Angel 1 is Asisa Cinema, which, funny enough, I've already covered one of his other films he did called The Hitman Blood Smells Like Roses, which he also was the main character, which he's on both his posters there. So he's one of the main stars, and funny enough, similar to Blood Smells Like Roses, he's a pop star turned actor. I think he does a really good job in the film. I think he's really good. I actually think his performance is actually better than this one compared to what it was in The Hitman Blood Smells Like Roses. You've also got Elaine Lui in the film, which is also a second kind of billing female actress in the film. Also with Kick-Ass, has a lot of kind of energy and personality to her. Very, incompetent at times in terms of the first entry, but definitely gets a much bigger role within the second one for sure in terms of her action, but definitely holds her own in this first entry as well. You've also got Alex Fung in the film, which is the kind of the US kind of sort of ambassador in a sense, someone who's basically working for the CIA in the States, who's come to Hong Kong and basically is offering them the backing and the support to basically put this task force together in terms of the Angels, and basically kind of fork the bill to go and take out the kind of the head of the operations, which is the Golden Triangle, which has basically been kind of ransacked and destroyed recently in terms of, really damaging kind of profits and drug operations with the Golden Triangle. And we have our female-led bad guy played by Yukari Shishima, which also appeared in a few other kind of, Hong Kong movies. I think she was also in Millionaire's Express. She's great in the film in terms of a kind of a female-led bad guy, in terms of your main villain for your film. She definitely owns the screen. She's definitely enjoying herself way too much compared to some of the other actors in the film, I would say. Definitely not playing it seriously, definitely hammering it up in terms of the over-the-top nature. Definitely very ruthless in terms of her scenes, and she definitely is a very captivating villain. I think she definitely holds her own throughout the entire film. I think she's an absolute blast to watch in terms of her performance, and I think she's just having a lot of fun as well. She has a lot of different types of unique sequences in terms of her kind of, interrogations, whether it's kind of the action, whether more the kind of seductive kind of nature. She definitely owns her own, and she has a really kick-ass third act fight scene, of course, with Moonlight, as to be expected. In terms of the film itself, I won't go too deep into this because there isn't really too much to go deep into, if I'm being completely honest. This is something that the extras really dive into from what I have seen so far, and just from the film itself is exactly what it says on the tin. I would say go into this film, Iron Angel 1, and probably the other movies as well, with low expectations, and just see if you're getting an entertaining piece. I would say in terms of Iron Angel 1, this is a 50-50 film. I think this is a split down the middle. On the one hand, you've got some pretty awesome action set pieces, great stunts, just over the top, just a lot of extras and, explosions and blood squibs and just some crazy kind of, fight work and wire work and just some really dangerous stunts. And it definitely has a lot of variety in that. And as the film gets a bit kind of, a bit sluggish at times, in terms of its pacing, in terms of its tone, it picks it back up again with a really cool action scene. Signature moment, I think, is really cool in terms of their individual scene, and mixed with some gadgetry work, some climbing up kind of, scrapper holding and rooftops, and some cool set designs. There's some car chase sequences as well. So there's definitely a lot of variety in terms of the action side, which is what you're coming to see essentially. This is a girls with guns film, action film, DIY low budget film. The action has to be good and has to be creative. Something that I've mentioned within the cinema films is that when you have a low budget, you're having to remain within your limits, but also you have to be creative Now, if you can't be creative with your characters and story, you have to be at least creative with your action and fight sequences and your bullet squibs and practical effects. Something that like the V Cinema films did quite well. Wherever one was lacking, the other picked itself up. And for the other 50%, as mentioned, I think the story is very much a mess and all over the place. It's kind of very incoherent at times. It wants to be a police procedural type thing at one bit, then it wants to be a comedy, then it wants to be this, it wants to be that. It definitely alters and shifts its tone. Something that even the booklet, in terms of the edition, actually acknowledges and dives into, in terms of admitting that the film is structurally, pace-wise, all over the place. You know, it's an hour-and-a-half movie, and it kind of alternates where it wants to go, but it does include and fuses some really cool action moments within that. And one of the things I would say definitely makes it definitely enjoyable is that the fact the film is ridiculously charming. It's a very charming film. You know, I never felt the film was boring. I never felt the film was dull. Even though it does go off in tangents, surprisingly, it is quite fun and it's quite charming. The characters are likable, their interactions are fun. I like the main lead, I like all the supporting characters, and it has this kind of very kind of, you know, international Charlie's Angels kind of riff going for. Very much kind of incompetent in terms of these kind of world-class angel characters, so expensive that no one can afford them, and yet they're setting off alarms or breaking vases or just doing the most silliest stuff, or getting kidnapped, or then getting, you know, rescued almost 10 minutes later. It's just such a back and forth. It's so funny in terms of these incompetent professionals, air quote, that you can't help but laugh. But the film has a really great cinematography. I think the style of the film is really kind of oozing. I love this kind of 80s kind of track in terms of the montage. I think the editing is quite unique, and definitely the cam work, the editing, the style, the lighting, all that really makes it a bit more higher budget than it actually is. And I think it helps in terms of some of that pacing, and which is why I think the film's so charming, when you've got a bunch of characters that are interacting with each other, and there's some good, interesting kind of chemistry there, mixed with some very stylized kind of, you know, John Woo-esque kind of, you know, background drops and great locations, and definitely mixing it up. You can forgive some of the film's shortcomings because of it, and I think it's a entertaining film, which is exactly what it says on the tin. For sure, the main villain, of course, has a great fight scene with Elaine Lui, which seems to be a signature of these kind of series. The only thing I would say with that is that one thing I didn't like is something that the Lucky Star movies did in the Twilight, in the kind of, you know, Sammo Hung's kind of action, in terms of, you know, having a great fight sequence and then someone else kind of stealing it last second, in terms of that thrill, in terms of the final kind of kill, essentially. I don't like that. However, the fight beforehand was pretty goddamn dope and pretty awesome. I just wish that the conclusion of that was left to the main character that you're here to see, and not someone else coming and stealing it out from the last second. I don't like that. It really annoys me. But yeah, I can move past it. So yeah, keeping it simple, Iron Angel 1, I think, is the equivalent of Hong Kong junk food. It's basically just a bit of a throw ride of a film, put it on. You know, you can watch this film practically without subtitles, more or less, because it's just a basic story. But I think the film was very charming. It has some creativity with its limitations. I think its action is great in terms of its car stunts, its explosions, its blood squibs, its hand-to-hand combat. Characters are charming and likable. While there is too many of them, they all add an individual kind of element to the film, which I think I appreciate. Creative montage sequences, 80s kind of music, and a very engaging, very fun female villain, which I think is very important to something like these, where you need to have at least your villain to be as strong as your hero characters. And if they can't happen, then at least have fun with it, go wild with it. And that's been my thoughts and impressions on Iron Angel 1. Please comment down below. What are your thoughts on the first film? What are your thoughts on the sequel entries? I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions. Please comment down below. In the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. So yeah.